There it is. Hello, everyone. Welcome, 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 welcome. I am Reverend Kari, and I am joined by Reverend Patty. So fun to be here in this space with you. We are going to be jamming on all good things as it relates to love, to our divine codes, to you name it, like
Mm.
everything intuitively related. So just want to take a moment, welcome you all into the space, including Rev Patty. Hello.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be here. How are you?
I'm good. And it is, we are cranking into the year, into a lot of new shifts and new energy. We just came across actually the Aquarian age, Pluto last week just synced up. So whether people are catching this live or tracking with it later on in space and time, just to give you reference point to where we are at energetically. So everything feels really fresh and new, and I look forward to diving into a lot of the stuff I love to talk about. And yeah, let's go for it. So first question for you, my love, is intuition. What is it? What does it mean to you? Like, how would you define it? And I love asking this question because
Mm.
as you know, so many of us we all know intuition, we all know gut check, we all know these different things.
Yeah,
Yet in the spiritual space, like we can be like, well, I'm channeling and I see this and I hear that and whatever. And it's not actually what we mean. Like it's just the language that gets used to speak about like what our intuition is saying and like ways to
yeah.
describe how our gut is talking to us. So I would love to hear your perspective and take on what that is, so that everybody is able to turn and crank their intuition up 1,000,000%.
Yes. Oh my God, I love this question. And I'm so excited that I'm on here with you. I was kind of trying to stream it to my audience and was distracted there in the beginning, but I'm present and I'm here. And I love that you're starting with this particular question because it's a big deal during all this time of awakening and of shifting. Yeah. For me, intuition, like I feel so connected to it. I believe that it is my spiritual inheritance. Yeah. That is what I call my intuition. It's one of my handed down spiritual skills that I've inherited and brought into this lifetime. Since tapping into my intuition and being able to connect to divine and to source, we start to learn the language and what type of intuitive we are, and what are the skills that we have, or how we tap into our intuition. And what I know about it now is that I am, first of all, a what they call a intuitive empath. Yes. So as an intuitive empath, I feel a lot,
Yeah.
and I can sense things and feel things. And the other piece that makes up my intuition is sort of telepathic, right? Because
Ooh, I love it.
I am Atlantean starseed. Part of my starseed is Atlantean. So there's a lot of telepathic abilities there. So what does that mean? That means that I spent a whole lot of time not trusting any of the messages I was getting, right? Like a lot of time saying um, that it was judgment,
Mm.
right? Because when it just dawned on me as a thought, I would interpret it as, either me judging or me putting people in a box. Like it depended on what message came through, but it was very easy to doubt it because it just came in as a thought, as data.
Right. Right.
I just get it as like something, almost like when you remember something and it just pops into your mind.
And you're not sure why you know it, but it's just there.
and you're not sure why you know it. It's just
So would that be your description for what it means to be telepathic? Like there's just things that you have awareness of and
yeah.
you don't
And
really know where it's coming from until you kind of unpack it and or
yeah,
figure it out later. Like how
yes,
would you?
I do have that connected to part of the telepathic ability, and so does the emotional and empathy, right? Because I can
Yeah.
feel people, right?
Yeah.
And that's telepathic as well. Like I can genuinely feel the energy of someone walking past me. I can
Right.
feel what they are feeling emotionally, right? And I have so many stories where it just became so evident that it
Mm.
was intuition and it was connecting through channel and not just me guessing.
Yeah.
Or
And so what I'm hearing you say is that like there's the intuitive piece, but the deeper our intuition is, or the more connection we have to it, that you start to feel some of these other more expanded things beyond just the emotions, beyond just walking into the room, beyond just
yeah,
whatever. Like it starts to come in at a much more granular level, and that's kind of where it starts to veer into the telepathic space.
right.
And I would love to hear some of those stories, right? I would love to hear kind of for you, and maybe it's just one, right? But just
Yeah,
what it is like that led you to this, because judgment's a big deal, right? If we're continually receiving information, trusting or maybe not trusting our intuition, or trusting it, but then taking that information and running it through, like, say, a set of filters,
yeah,
like judgment, that cause you to then hold that space or that belief about that person without actually having anything else to go on, or the context, if you will, behind why you formulated that thought. That can lead you down some very interesting paths that
yeah. It's
have
very
lessons to
revealing.
teach.
Yeah, there was a lot of second guessing, a lot of shushing myself because there
Okay.
wasn't trust in what I was seeing and believing. And then there was also a lot of getting ahead of myself because it happened in both directions. It would either be, it's polarized, right? Where I would see it and just like un, convince myself to unsee it, and it's unreal,
Mm,
and
yeah.
you're making this up, and just let it go, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
there's the point of like, running towards the fire kind of thing, where it's like saying
Totally.
it without consent and permission, or not getting neutral around it.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So I've managed to develop the ability to get neutral, to know when it is not me and it is intuition, and to understand ways in which I am being guided to support, maybe just understanding how to get out of my own way around it,
Yeah.
into service around it has been the big thing. And in terms of stories, like I have a story which I love, because it was the story that helped me understand that this wasn't a bad thing. It was here for me to use and
Mm,
leverage and help.
yeah.
So I was at this event. It was a women's event, and we're in a room of over 70 women. A lot of them women that I know from our community as entrepreneurs. So it was a room of people that I was acquainted with mostly, right? So it was a room where I kind of knew people's lives enough to kind of look to one direction and understand what one person was kind of living in that moment, right? Because we were in this mastermind and we were there together and we were kind of journeying through life together. So it was a room of peers. And as the event is happening, one of my peers gets up from about 4 tables to my right and walks behind me. Meanwhile, I'm not watching her do this. I'm feeling
Right.
her do this, right?
Yep.
And when she walks behind me, I feel her energy. She continues to leave the room. And in my mind, the message is get up and follow her.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I, fight that off for half a second, think about it 2 or 3, how we,
Right.
right? But then there's this urge, and this urge that's coming through physically. It's visceral, right? So I get up and I go and I follow her. I find her halfway down the hallway, passed out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this was the experience that led me to really say yes to this, right? Because it was literally a life-saving moment. She was having an ectopic pregnancy.
Wow.
And we all know how those experiences are timely. Like if you don't get to a medical support, it could be a life change, a life losing condition. So
wow.
I was able to get through that experience and sit with myself and realize that this is here for good. It's here for evolution of me in support of others. And that was, I think, one of the initiation moments where I was like, okay, I get to befriend this. I get to lean into this. This is it's a spiritual gift. And that's a beautiful thing, and then we go from an experience like that to an experience where I'll walk into a room and just the thought of of a very personal information will land about someone. And then I'm like, okay.
Now what?
Yeah, so that's me and intuition. I think that it is a beautiful relationship that I've been able to build with it, because it's given me the opportunity to connect to self-trust in such a powerful way.
I love it. I love it. I love that story too. We've known each other for years now, and I've never heard that story. So I'm so glad that's the one that came out, because I think there are those moments. Well, I know there are those moments, and there are always a lot of them, right? Where spirit is weaving in, and the bigger field, whatever language we want to put on it, is always happening. But there are those like benchmark moments, which is what that was to me, right? That you just described, like a true benchmark moment where literally it's like there was a before and after that intuitive exchange with yourself, right? Of like, do I trust this? Do I not? And so as we find those become,
I feel like it was divinely orchestrated, because the fact that I'm such a supporter, right? And such a advocate of helping others and guiding others. And it came through an opportunity to support someone else. I feel like it needed to come through that way for me to stop and pay attention to it,
Right. Wow. So as it relates then to all of the different ways, because I know you have a very multi-dimensional space that you navigate through, and how you bridge that with your clients, and your brand is Divine Boss Lady, because you had spent and have like this whole wheelhouse of sales and corporate and just all of this. And there had to be some challenges, like, and some stuff that was happening in that space as well, where the intuition was not only helping you navigate, but then probably navigating your way out of the space. And so what was that like, making the transition? And you still connect with supporting women in the corporate space and
Yeah.
entrepreneurial space and everything. So how do you find that bridge, and just where people are landing, and what some of those challenges were for you? Again, back to the judgment, because it's such a structured 3D mainstream way, and masculine, like hustle, hustle, you gotta go, you gotta be like that aggressive personality,
Yeah.
compared to being in this big intuitive space, which is pretty much the polar opposite, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so right now, everything is a transition, right? And I feel like I am as closest as I've ever been to that harmonious blend where my awakened boss lady, which is the brand that my brand, Awakened Boss Lady, is most blended, right? In that sacred sweet spot where my boss lady and my priestess are united, right? And that's a beautiful experience to have. My word this year is harmony, because of the access to harmony between these polarized versions of me, right? The boss lady and the warrior, all the way here, and the priestess and the wise woman all the way here. And for years, when I first came into this work, it was very siloed. It was very siloed, painfully siloed, right?
Yeah.
So I came, I was born and bred in corporate. Yes, my identity had a very strong, it was conditioned and formed with corporate mindset, very masculine perspective, right? So and even in my upbringing and my tribe, it was still I was brought up by very strong matriarchal women that ran some very strong masculine veins. Yes. So it was just like so much was in that blueprint of who I was, right? In the upbringing and the conditioning and the socialization that I had. So for me, moving into this more sacred spiritual realm was ignored for a very long time. I tell a lot of people that I had such a high resistance to anything that sounded like weakness or slowing down, or anything that sounded like, parking on the side of the road was not something that I was open to. So a lot of things now, when I look back, I can tell happened that were intended to bring me into that. And I didn't see them. I didn't listen. I kept thinking that it was about pushing through and getting up, and, that willpower and that stickativity that is part of my upbringing, right? I look back on those moments, and now I can tell that there were moments where I was meant to evolve and expand, right? What finally did it for me was the death of my mother. Yeah. So in 2015, my mom passes of metastatic breast cancer. And I tell the story in a lot of my talks where I share how my mother's death saved my life, because when she passes, I go into the human experience of it, which is grieving, full identity crisis, full on like anxiety attacks. Like I couldn't even drive some days. I couldn't get behind the wheel of my car because there was so much undoing, right? It was like literally the equivalent of a Kundalini awakening without the Kundalini part.
Right.
So I have this life experience that just kicks me to the other side. So I went from, masculine, pushing through life, devoted to doership and all the material pieces, to completely spiritual, disconnected, coping
Wow.
through meditation. And it was just like a complete swing to the other side of the spectrum. And I spent
Yeah.
a long time there.
Yeah.
Like there
Yeah.
were a couple of years, you remember me in that experience, right? Where
Yeah.
that was the only place where I could feel a little bit of self-soothing, right? And it made me, you know, even disconnect from anything that was the material world, to that I was coasting, right? I had the
Yep.
job and I would show up enough to pay the bills, but I was no longer enrolled and subscribing to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like in 2019, which was another moment where Uranus kind of threw the wild card at me, right?
Yeah.
And it was like my pandemic before everyone else's pandemic. As teachers, we were kind of brought in first, right?
Yeah.
And in 2019, I really started to realize how I am a businesswoman. I love business. I love the woman that's in the front lines of corporate and of entrepreneurship. And that this spirituality, the ability to connect with higher consciousness and energy, maintenance, and energetic hygiene is the missing link
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
success with satisfaction, to
Yeah.
bringing them to a place where they could have it all and not have it from a place of settling and sacrificing and suffering, which is the formula we've been given.
Yeah.
So that's where Awakened Boss Lady was born. And that's where this harmony of the two began. And every year it's about, you know, bringing them in closer together, befriending the two, turning on the circuitry where it makes sense for women. And this year it's really, really about harmony and practicality. How can I make this to where it's so simple for a woman to understand, right? Where
Yeah.
it's the divine and universal order of things. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, and to that end, it's always so interesting to me how the journey presents itself, right? And in the ways in which we are guided to, again, like you said, predestined according to whatever the blueprint is, to turn the volume up on what that voice is and what it has to offer, and how comfortable, while seemingly uncomfortable and stuck, we may feel at any given point in time, but how limited our options may present themselves to be, you know, whether it's a big shift in life or a death or whatever. Like, we kind of have to just, until we're ready to push through whatever that resistance barrier is, just keep going with it and keep showing up, because we don't know any other way. And so what I would love to hear from you is in that space of getting unstuck. And I know you have just released your book not too long ago, within the last couple of months. You really laid out that formula for the getting that unstuck, that into that space where you're able to break through whatever our own personal glass ceilings are. And it all comes back. You have so many, I love the terminology you use. You have like so many easy, concise, like, oh yeah, that's what is missing, or that's what I need. And so I would love to hear that from you. And I'll just add to this part of the conversation in whatever way it's meant to weave in, how when we're doing it, it's so hard when we're in that space of like being held or holding ourselves back, to actually see what the options are, right? To understand, oh, well, I just have to like focus in on this one thing that I'm doing, because we're like throwing the ball, or we maybe have a vision for something, but there is just zero clarity on what is between, you know, here and then the end of the line, so to speak, or wherever we think the end of the line is supposed to be. And I know, and you know, as we move through that, it becomes a circular type of experience where it's a little of this, and then we go here, and then we go here, and then we're back at this again. So I know that was your process for unpacking a lot of the codes of self-love, but tell us a little about them, and just, you know, whatever comes to mind in the moment to share.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes up, which is kind of making me giggle, is our moments where we would sit together and have conversations, and I'd come to you about the current realization that I was having, or non-realization that I was kind of hitting my head against the wall about. And there was this one thing that you would say that always helped and annoyed me. Right? It was like a
You're welcome.
frustrating, yeah,
Yeah.
it was like a frustrating moment. And I think it's important to share, because as teachers, um, it's important to recognize sometimes when we're in sponsorship of our mentee's soul, and that there are things that we're going to say that help but aren't as clear
Yeah.
at that moment, and then become like just very clear. We would talk, and there were moments where you would say, Patty, you just got to get on that channel. You remember those
Like,
moments? It's like,
like just change the channel. Yeah.
just change the channel. Just get on the channel. Once you're on that channel, and I'd hear it and I'd get it and I could see it, but I couldn't find the right door. Like, I could
Yeah.
not get out of my own way enough
Yeah.
to make it sustainable.
Now, do you think some of the judgment was playing into that? Is that
Uh,
kind of how you started to unpack
yeah,
what
I
was in
mean,
there? Yeah.
yeah, there was definitely the 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 judgment. There was the it almost felt like a veil, right? There was a veil.
Absolutely.
That's
Yep.
what it felt like when we say the veil has lifted. It's very much that experience of, I couldn't see it,
Yep.
and I know it was always there, and
Yep.
now I can. Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the frustration, actually, right? Like, I know she's not crazy. I know it's there. I can't see it. It's almost when someone's telling you it's right there. Can't you see it? Like, you're
Yeah.
looking for something and they're telling you it's right there. Don't you see it? And you're like,
Yeah.
no. Right.
Well,
So that experience is very, to me, a very practical way to support people in, just keep going. Yeah,
yeah.
just keep
Just
going.
keep going. Well, and it's kind of like the metaphor that comes to mind in the moment is you're trying to change the trajectory and the course of your life.
Yeah.
Whatever you're envisioning is in the future vision space, right? And it's not there. It's, if you can see it, it's there. And if you're trying to choose it, then we just know it has to become a frequency alignment and continuing to show up to it. And yet it's still like a ship that has to slowly rotate until the brain has acclimated with, like, letting that be what is the predominant energy that's driving us. And the moment that happens, then the channel's changed and the door closes on whatever was, and the rest is history. But
Yeah.
it's that slight turning and recalibration from the mental to
Yeah.
the energy body, and allowing for all of those pieces to sync up with where you are. And I am going to guess that while in the initiatory phases of being in that space of changing the channel, it felt incredibly and painfully slow, that at this point now, now that you know how to do it, you're like, oh, okay, boom.
Yeah.
And you're just able to adjust, continually adjust. It's almost like you were trying to steer the ship while docked at shore. And now, like, once you've learned the mechanism, you can steer in any direction, and it isn't this major life, like, I need to start manifesting from here and doing this and all of those things, because that density is gone.
Yeah, the density's gone. It's led from the frequency and energetic perspective, not the mental, which was where I was like, okay, get on the channel. How does my mind do that? It's not a mental thing, right? It's an embodied relationship. Yes. And now there is a certain athleticism that comes in.
I love
right?
that word for it. Yeah.
When we open up the circuitry, right? So from that experience, I wrote my book, right? A lot of what I am devoted to, once again, is the ability to become one, the ability to become one. I spent a lot of time fragmented. I spent a lot of time with
The
a
two
lot of,
silos.
yeah, the two silos, and they were like lined up versions of each silo.
Yeah.
Like on this side, you had the masculine, then she was the warrior, then she's the doer, and then she's the control freak, and like layers of versions of this side of the spectrum, and layers of version of this side of the spectrum, and masks over masks, and none of them speaking to each other, right? And yelling at each other, and making each other feel wrong. There was so much fragmentation.
Yeah.
And I believe that it all happened for me, as everything does, because it's what's become my work, right? How can I help a woman come home to center, come home to self, come home to unity, where all these versions are accessible and are versions that she can assign, right, in her sovereign state to
like
all
choose who's going to be in the driver's seat is what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
Yes. Versus, having the boss lady in the driver's seat of, my relationship with my significant other, where I want to feel held and feminine and protected and nurtured. That's not who gets to hold the keys for that relationship, right? And how I want to show up as a mom, and how I get to show up now as a grandmother, and how I get to show up as a mentor. All these versions of me are wonderful, beautiful versions of me. So the book was very much a devotion from Mary Magdalene that came through me, right?
Beautiful.
For us to dedicate ourselves to love. And the first and most important version of love, which is love of self.
Yeah.
And the realization that I had, where it was the most important thing we're here to do is be in relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
And evolve that relationship, right? This who we think this human and soul, this masculine and feminine, right? That we come in as. How can we bring these pieces together into sacred union and self-sponsorship, right? Like those are the things that I realized we're here for. It's not to get, we do the other things, right? Because we're on planet Earth, and this is the infrastructure. We go out, we make money, we pay our bills. Like that's how it works here, right?
Yeah.
But it's not what our soul is here to prioritize.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So for me, if a woman can awaken her codes, like these are the tools that get us the answers to a higher level living, a higher quality life. Understanding the universal laws, first and foremost, and really connecting the circuitry and the codes of self-love, right, to where we are self-actualized. As close, if not our highest version. Yeah?
Yeah. Well, and to me, it's like the first step in doing that is coming back to the intuition, right?
Yes.
So as you're connecting, speaking about Mary Magdalene and her values and fostering that relation and nurturing that relationship with self, the only way we can speak to ourselves is through our intuition, right? And then adjust and calibrate. And what I'm hearing you say, especially in talking about these different hats or roles that we play throughout our lives, and how some versions of ourselves aren't communicating with other versions. And so we end up in these situations where part of us wants this, but the other one is nagging or saying, no, you don't deserve it, or whatever, and however that inner dialogue talks, when it all syncs up, then the voices unite and intuitively lead you to receiving the divine guidance. Would
you
that
just
be?
know. Yeah.
a good way to summarize it.
Yeah, that's the perfect summarizing, right? You get to a place where you're at the highest level of self-trust.
Right. Right.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that, and that self-trust, right? Trust what, that when your body's calling for something,
Yeah.
that it's true.
Yeah.
Trust that when you have a low boundary or need to place a boundary, or set some standards,
Yeah.
trust, it creates the entire infrastructure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're in a level, you're at a place where the the thing that was getting in your way, which was that self-doubt, which comes from that conditioning or that ancestral chain or that karmic, pull, that your
Yeah.
density that you're still holding, starts to dissolve.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and
I
there's
love
work
it.
to be done there too, but it's through the self-trust that you can say yes to everything, the work,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the dissolution of all these things, and the stepping into this newer version. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I want to circle back to Mary Magdalene again, because I know
My
she has
favorite.
played a very powerful role in your life, always, really always. And for many people, there's a lot of disillusionment around who she is, what she is, and I know, as you do in Priestess, we're coming into a deepening of that partnership and that relationship, and the ways in which we can run our own personal Magdalene
Yeah.
codes, if you will. And so I would love to hear from you, especially because you own it. Like you're a reverend, right? Like you own all of these super spiritual aspects of yourself and your expression. And you have these incredible events and this process and the book and retreats and all kinds of stuff that you do
Yeah.
to bring women into that space and find these things for themselves. But how do you bridge that? Like, what does that look like, bridging some of those pieces for people who maybe have never heard the name before or don't
Yeah.
know what a priestess is, or if they do, they have like some negative connotation with it or whatever. Tell me a little bit about the journey from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the journey is interesting, right? I come from a very Catholic background and was born and raised Catholic. I went to Catholic grammar school, all girls Catholic high school, and Catholic university. So just
Checked every single box.
think about what that meant, and the representation of Mary Magdalene in that community, like what she
Yeah.
was portrayed as, right? So when I've had all of it. Yeah, the doubt, the questioning, the skepticism. And for me, it's very much what I hold most valuable is modeling, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that's gonna always speak at the end of the day. It's gonna be the thing that tells the story, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I've been around enough um incongruencies
Yes.
to know how much harm and how that could mess with us, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the most important thing is modeling. And I take that very seriously. And I am always devoted to holding high standards on how I walk through life, and the things I share and the things I say. And that's the number one thing. I feel like it's very simple, right? The more I can simplify how I see things, the better people can understand it. And the best description that I feel I can give to what I do as a reverend and as a shamanic priestess is when we talk about the cardinal cross. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's the best description, where I can tell a woman, learning and connecting to the power of, speaking to divine and listening to divine, right? To the power of the mirrors that we have that are given to us by Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Right? That's this axis, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then being able to take those things and plug them into your daily reality.
Yeah.
Being able to take those things and show up in all these areas, right? You've heard me say before where I am classy with a little bit of hood and a whole lot of spiritual. All
Absolutely.
of these areas get to see what my version of Mary Magdalene is.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to be able to walk through any door and know that I get to bring her with me because Mary Magdalene modeled being in all of it.
Yeah.
In all of it. And it's so much permission. There isn't a holier than thou type of way to show up, right? It's a how authentic and fully self-expressed and connected to love can I be? That's it.
I love that. Yeah.
To me, that's how I describe it. And you know, people are going to receive what they can, what they have the capacity to receive. I spent a lot of time worrying about what other people think.
There's that judgment again. Yeah.
A lot of time worrying about what other people think. And I could honestly say that, you know, there's probably some residue of that still that I run, but it is so minuscule at this point. Like I've been able to, and I've been put through some very difficult experiences where I've been rejected, where I've been tossed aside, where I've been excluded from certain groups, right? By family, friends, and groups in order to get to this place where I no longer make that a priority. I just kind of do my thing, do the best.
You model as best as you can.
As best as I can.
Amazing. Amazing. I love how, I love your articulation, kind of how you wrapped all of that up, because it is so on point as we each find not only our best version of ourselves, but also that element of who we are that is most of the time likes to stay hidden or behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And like the super vulnerable pieces of what we are, what we have to offer, whether we're putting work that's related to what our soul is asking us to do or not, or we're just showing up because it's a mechanism for us to pay the bills so we can have a good life. It doesn't matter. We can still hold that field, that flame, that energy, and it requires that internal dialogue. It requires that intuitive piece to be able to ensure that that voice of our greatest authentic expression and self is what rises to the surface. And so I think, you know, just in testament to you, you do a brilliant job of, especially as you learn to shift and steer the direction of the ship, of figuring out and going slow enough to allow that to be the voice that guides you in the presencing of your words and the work you're doing in the world and the people that you're weaving in and out of. And really, I think it also lands you as one of those rocks, right? One of those pillars, if you will, that a lot of people can come into and connect with, because that piece is unshakable, right? Like that part of who you are that you're speaking to from the Magdalene space is truly unshakable, like unwavering in that sense. So
thank you. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I genuinely receive. And, you know, I don't want to overlook or I want to make sure we share how much of a constant check-in that is. Like, part of what I'm getting from what you're saying is our visibility, right? My visibility.
Yeah.
Visibility is something that I am in constant check-in around, right?
Yeah.
And constant, measuring, like the thermometer of how I feel, right? Because our, you once shared how showing up and speaking up and sharing how and what we're up to is a version of Christ consciousness. And I never forgot that, right? I remember the way you shared it, and what the way it landed for me was, it's another place where I get to get out of my own way and find my sweet spot, right? The place where I can show up, speak up, and share my truth without feeling the pressures and the ickiness that some of these platforms can offer, right?
Yeah. Because coming out and being seen, so often there's just this inauthenticity that comes along with it. Like it's part of the territory, right? And it's the old program.
The territory. And all the things that we have that we're running as past life karmic stuff, right? Like, literally my throat chakra and my crown was like suppressed in order to protect me, and all of that gets to be removed and dissolved and worked through as we're doing this work and showing up. It's such a Chiron, like it's such a Chiron wounded healer experience.
Yeah. Well, and we're in it for a while now too, right? So what are some of the big things you have coming up this year? And, since we've just crossed the galactic plane, Pluto's moved into Aquarius for the first time since who knows when. Yeah. And so how has that been guiding what is coming down the pike for you, and what, as you continue to step into being seen and even more seen, total compounding of all of this, what's coming up?
There's a lot. There's a lot happening behind the scenes that I'm excited about. I called in higher visibility this year, so there's going to be some showing up on stages, some showing up at events that I'm excited about, and welcoming and calling in more, because I want to be in the energy of, and in the rooms where women are having these conversations, not necessarily spiritually, but the conversations about how do we get to this next level? How do we, raise our trajectory, right? And it can come as questions about their finances, their relationships. It could show up in any area. So I'm inviting a lot of that, doing some public speaking I'm going to be on a live TV show soon. And
congratulations.
That feels exciting. It feels different. I'm also doing something that I've been resisting for a long time, which is going to be interesting to see how it shows up. I'm just saying yes to it. I'm kind of calling it in and allowing the universe to show me. But you know that before the pandemic, I had a women's group, a women's circle that we connected to live. And since the pandemic, my entire business shifted online, and I never really did that. And this year, I am relaunching the Awakened Boss Lady Success Circle.
Nice.
That's going to be a beautiful way where women can come together on a monthly basis. And we're going to be working on what I'm calling the power trio, which is their ability to connect energy with mindset and strategy, like really understanding how this thread gets pulled through all the way to execution and navigating their life, right? And that's an interesting, fun thing. It's going to be a very easy, lower price point experience, so that women can come and start to get to know and trust themselves in these conversations. So that's an exciting
Amazing.
thing that I want to highlight. And with the visibility piece, I'm bringing in a lot of much more highlight to my book.
Cool.
And really coming in to forums where the executive woman, because I've worked more with the entrepreneurial woman, where the executive woman is living. I believe that that is the front lines. The executive woman that wants to stay in corporate, that didn't leave, that still feels a connection to significance and
Right.
to contribution in that area,
Yes.
gets to feel this work.
I
Yes.
love it. Yeah. I
So
love
that's
it.
going to be the new group
They're
of women.
ready. I think they're ready for you, Patty. I
So
think
I
they're
think
ready for you.
so. You think so? I hope so.
Amazing. Well, and for those that are and happen to be streaming past this episode, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram under Awakened Boss Lady Coach. You can find me on my website as awakenedbosslady.com.
Okay.
And my name, you can find me under my name. These are the places. Just DM me, reach out and say hi wherever you can find me. That's the plan.
Beautiful. All right. I love it. Well, it is such an honor to weave and connect and hear the different stories. And really, you're such a beacon of light for so many people that are out there and just trying to figure out and shift the challenging situations that they find themselves in, and really know now that they get to come back to self, they get to come back to self-love. And you have so many beautiful steps to support people in figuring out what that means. Like, it's not some airy-fairy thing of like, I got to love myself more and do some self-care and whatever else. No, like, there's some really basic, simple, granular things and steps and ways. It's like you do a great job of taking off all of the lenses of all of those voices that are living inside there and helping the one lens come to the surface. So it's been an honor to connect, and
thank you. Thank you.
So
It's
much
been
love.
so much fun. Thank you for having me. I love this. You know how I love just chatting. We can go on forever.
Absolutely. We
And
could.
sending you lots of love. Deep
Thank
bow,
you.
sister. Deep bow.
Have a beautiful day.